Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the main stage, final day of Switch 2025. I hope everyone's doing good. Thank you for joining us. Now, next up, we have a very exciting panel discussion, and it's all about Singapore startup founders building bold ideas for global impact. Now, we're going to shine the spotlight on Singapore's startup ecosystem. It is a thriving hub where bold ideas are being built to make a global impact. This morning, we have a new generation of founders who are scaling companies from idea to impact, navigating the challenges of talent, of funding and market access, while driving solutions for the region and the world. Please join me in welcoming the moderator for this panel discussion, Mr. Mohan Balani, CEO of E27 and partner of Orville Ventures. Good morning, Mohan. We also have our speakers for today, Mr. Aaron Tan, co-founder and CEO of Caro. I feel I need to sing it. I hear it so often, Caro. With us also, Mr. Jeffrey Tiong, founder and CEO of PatSnap. Very good morning. And we've got Mr. Rob Schmeck, founder and group CEO of Bolt Tech. Hello. Good morning, gentlemen. Over to you, Mohan.
Hi, morning. Thank you very much for the introduction. It's really great to be back here at Switch. I've been here for multiple years now. The energy every year is exciting, so I'm really personally quite excited about being here. More excited about running this panel session, which is really about 3 global founders that started from Singapore as a heavy base and have now expanded their companies to the global market. Before we jump into the questions, I would like to take the opportunity to give each one of them some airtime to introduce themselves and their business and what they're working on. Maybe, Rob, you can start first.
Thanks for being here, everyone. My name is Rob Schimmick. I am the global founder and CEO of Bolt Tech. We operate today on 4 continents, North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa, and across 39 countries. What we are is an insurtech. We bring technology to the insurance industry to make protection more tailored, affordable, and accessible for consumers. We are focused on trying to help to close a global multi-trillion-dollar protection gap, and that is a mission that guides the entire view of the company.
Great, thanks, Rob. Jeff?
Yeah, our company called PatSnap, so we develop intelligence for companies who invest a lot in R&D and help them do better R&D as well as intellectual property protection.
Yeah, my company is a lot easier to understand. I'm founder of this company called Caro. We sell cars online. We are heavily present in Singapore and across Asia Pacific right this second. 4,000 over people now across these areas. But yeah, thanks for having me this morning.
So for context, right, can we just have a sensing? Aaron, your companies operates primarily in APAC. That's correct. Jeff, it's?
We in US, Europe, Japan, China, and Singapore.
And then Rob?
North America, Europe, and Asia.
Got it. Okay, so very much global for the two of you, very much like I would say APAC-wide for you, but we even had some conversations about Europe, so we'll get to that in a bit. So we start with Singapore, right? I think the whole context for this panel discussion is started in Singapore, expanded for the world. What is it about being based here in Singapore that really, I think, gave you all a strong kickstart and a strong fundamental base to start with? I'll leave it for any one of you to take this first.
I'll start. I mean, we started in Singapore back almost 10 years ago, like 9 years to be exact. And you know, Mohan, you know how we started together with you. We were all in the same building and stuff. I think really what was good about Singapore is that it was small enough that it was big enough, right? It was small enough that we were able to quickly find the right talent, the right people and stuff and whatnot. It was pretty dense and a lot of good talent around the area, right? But it's big enough in the sense that it was global, right? And we use Singapore as a very good springing board for us to get out, right? And everybody likes this. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of the countries that we went into subsequent, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and stuff like that. Whenever you say that you are from Singapore, you're from a Singapore outbound tech company, they tend to listen. They don't like dismiss you straight away. I think that is a strong plus as well. And I think that I would also add that for us, we were also very blessed that we started as Singapore as a base, because at that point in time, back 10 years ago, in the 2015, 2016, as we started the business, the venture funds were more actively deploying capital mostly in Singapore because I would say the rule of law is more like clean, right, in that sense. And people don't think twice about investing in a Singapore company. They know that investing in Singapore-based business, Singapore Inc. in that sense, is safe, right? The IP rule, IP laws are respected in that sense. So, and that's the reason why, setting up in Singapore made a lot of sense back then in 9 or 10 years ago, and it continued to do, to be very suitable for us.
So I'll say small starting point. Trustworthy business environment, and then there was a talent concentration, but also capital concentration here, right? Is it the same thing for the two of you?
We received our capital from Asia, and so Singapore became the headquarters of the business. We loved it for the same basic reasons, so I won't repeat them. We love it as a gateway to all of Asia. The other thing is that the access to capital, which is the fuel that actually helps us to succeed, is certainly available here in Singapore. And then I think that this is this is a country that also pushes a high premium on innovation. Look at this event as an example. So this whole concept of creating a sandbox where you can experiment, where you can learn, where the government will support you, these things are also very helpful.
Right. So in your case, innovation-centric support and backing from the government that doesn't just say it will do it, but actually walks the talk, right? By providing the infrastructure that allowed you to scale. Jeff, anything else to add?
Yeah, everything both these gentlemen say, 100% agree. Maybe I'll add one more point. I think Singapore is a very good East-Meet-West kind of bridge. So from Singapore, if you want to find someone who's familiar with Chinese market or entering US market, or you want to have certain things that do with the East and West, I think Singapore is that fusion port to find the talent, the capital, the network, everything. Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, good balance of I would say Western capitalist business building ideals, but also Eastern and Asian values. I think that's a really good balance from a business standpoint. So as you guys scaled then, right? In some of your case globally, in some of your case regionally, right? How was Singapore helpful in getting you out, right? What did you have to tweak or change, or maybe even keep the same, right? When you got out of Singapore, and what were some of the lessons as you scaled out?
I mean, for myself, to be very frank, it is very different operating. The first 3 countries that we went outside Singapore was, I would say, somewhat developing economies, right? So Indonesia, Thailand comes to mind. And to be very frank, I took very little out from Singapore, right? Because it was a totally different operating style, very different management style even and stuff and whatnot. So there were a lot of things that we learned in Indonesia and Thailand, which I felt that I couldn't really bring out of the developing markets.
For context, the first market you got out was Indonesia?
Was
Thailand?
Indonesia and then Thailand.
And then Thailand, okay.
Yeah. So in that context, we really didn't take that much out in that sense. But as soon as we entered, a more developed market, like say Hong Kong, Japan, even Australia now, the truth of the matter is that there's a lot more similarities in those markets than we have, right? Like say, for instance, the transferring of titles is online. I think that's a very big difference by itself for us. And even the hiring of the people, the kind of salary ranges and stuff like that. You don't deal with, things that you would have to deal with, say, Indonesia and Thailand, right? Let's say, for instance, again, I don't mean to make it sound like that bad, but the truth is, in places like Thailand, Indonesia, you have to deal with a lot of, I would say, petty control issues, right? Everything ranging from like overclaims, right? Things like, issues of transferring titles, physical titles of books, of cars, from like Bangkok to Pak Chong, Nong Khai. How do you actually give someone like a title of vehicle which is like $30,000-$40,000, and that is like a few years of their salaries, if that makes sense to you, right? How do you build that trust and network, that logistics, the back end, to bring all these things down to people out in the 3rd, 4th cities in Thailand? Yeah. So stuff like that. So it opened up my eyes at least to the fact that operating in Singapore was so much easier, right, versus operating in all these markets. And I'll be curious to hear how these gentlemen actually scale their UK businesses, their China business. I think is even tougher, right? But I think it's a slightly different domain. It's B2B, so I think that's more interesting.
So I guess when you got out, you appreciate home a lot more, right?
Yeah,
in that
for
sense,
sure. So that's why I always say to people, right, unless you go out, you don't realize how lucky you are. You're in Singapore, be it studying, be it working, or be it in business.
Yeah, I guess being Singaporeans, we sometimes complain a bit too much and don't take things for granted, right? So, actually, so for Jeff, was the first market outside for you also in within Southeast Asia, or was it somewhere else?
Actually, first market for us is both China and UK.
China, UK.
So
okay.
yesterday, me and Rob was just in another panel. I was sharing like these examples that how different. So in China, when you need to kind of team bonding with the teams, you go to a dinner 6 p.m. They start having dinner, and then you 干白酒, like 白酒干杯, and then 7:30 at most 8 o'clock done. You do what you need to do, target setting or say what you want to say. That is Chinese. And during dinner, usually their topic is about back then the dynasty, how the general, conquer the other side. With my UK colleagues, usually I think about 6, 7, having a beer, standing on the roadside at the pub for the whole night, holding the same beer, and then just chatting there. Very slow, chill until 10, 11 p.m. And the topic is about the football, everything, the weather. That is the difference. But I want to say, deep underlying human nature is still the same. Like everyone also want to be recognized, want to do good work. I think that's our experience scaling up in different places.
I'll say that there are three things that stand out for me beyond, in addition to what the guys have said about being here from Singapore. The first one is Bolttech operates as an insurance business, so we are highly regulated. And so when you can operate in a regulatory environment like here in Singapore, a highly sophisticated, very well-regulated business environment, regulated by the MAS, that has a lot of credibility when you go anywhere else in the world because they recognize that you can operate under the purview of such a strong regulator. The second thing is that this, as a gateway to all of Asia, attracts many real nice global partners, many nice global companies. So we work with on a B2B2C basis. So we're always about working with business partners who are global business partners. So we see them here in Singapore. We don't have to go somewhere else to become their partners. We become their partners here in Singapore. It's great because we follow them to other countries. That's how we've expanded, following the partners that we've been introduced to or we've started working with here in Singapore. And then the third thing is, I say, there's just some element of credibility in the global stage that comes from being in Singapore. They have this thing that sometimes companies use when they want to evaluate what they go into markets, and they call it the corruption index. And Singapore stacks up very, very, very well on that index, which brings a lot of credibility. Wherever you go to operate in the world, they recognize that you're coming from a country that is already so well respected.
Yeah, I think that gives you a good trust basis, right? That allows them to work with you without having to do too much background checks and all that. But regulation is a big part of your business. And I guess, okay, regulation here is complicated enough. When you had to expand to the UK and these other markets, did you have to re-figure out regulation all over again? Or was Singapore like a good enough basis that allow you to just tweak the regulation expectations in other markets?
Regulation around the world is so complicated, and it's actually a special moat for a business like ours because the ability to understand how to work with the different regulators. I would love to tell you that working with the regulators in Singapore has made it super easy to work with the regulators in the other countries, but that would not be true. It does make us good at dealing with regulators and respected when we go to those other regulators. But the truth of the matter is that the regulation in Hong Kong is different than the regulation in Singapore, is different than the regulation in Indonesia, is different than the regulation in Thailand, et cetera, et cetera. And so it gives you a general sense of credibility and expertise, but you always need to be able to localize that to any country that you operate in.
And then Jeff and Aaron, right, is regulation a big issue with your own businesses?
For me, yes, because a big part of our business is actually financial services, more in the lending space than it is in the underwriting in that sense. But so as a result, I have to deal with the regulators in pretty much each of the jurisdiction that we are in that we do lending. We are fairly sizable in places like Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and a few others. So I have to deal with each of the regulators accordingly. And I fully agree with Rob. Every regulator is different. It doesn't mean that the Singapore ones is easier to deal with or the Hong Kong one is easier to deal with. And they all have their own problems.
Okay, let's look at growth, right? I mean, so the three of you have companies that are, at a level where a lot of founders who can only dream of, right, and really aspire to reach. And growth is now, of course, stymied with, challenges from an interest rate issue to pressures from investors on profitability. So we start with the generic issue thing, right? How are you all thinking of growth now? What does growth mean for each of your organizations? Is top line growth still a big factor, or is new markets an area that you're looking at? What does growth mean for each of you now?
Okay, I'll start by saying that if you think about any private company wishing maybe one day to ever become public, if you take the signals from the market, what do you learn? One thing that you learn is that growth by itself will never be the equation, because anyone who's a credible investor wants to see that you're creating value, and value is not created solely by growth. However, it is a fact of life, whether people believe this or don't, that the market rewards growth almost 2 to 1 relative to profitability. So it's a balancing act. If you have no profitability but great growth, you're not going to win. If you have great profitability and no growth, you're not that attractive. So you need to have this balance between profitability and growth. And so certainly within the Bolttech organization, we focus on balancing those two. It causes us maybe to give up some elements of growth that we otherwise could achieve, because we insist on achieving this profitability metric that is really the measure of value creation for our outside investors.
Yeah, I think definitely the market pendulum swings. I would say the last few years post-COVID, we focus, or at least the market expect companies to focus more on profitability. And in our enterprise software space, there is a thing called Rule of 40. Rule of 40 is the growth rate plus your margin rate. Add up, if it's equal to 40, then you are in good hands. So the last few years, investors have been saying, the margin get to 20, 30, growth 10, 20 is fine. And then this year, then the investor and the banker told us, oh, Jeff, it's actually better 30% growth, even a bit less profitability is fine. So I think the market definitely swings, but ultimately, I think the company, for all of us, or what, we need to keep balancing growth and profitability at the same time.
So if I hear you correctly, right, just so I before we jump to Aaron, right, last year I think profit was a bigger driver. This year it's starting to go back to growth being a bigger driver. And I guess to some level it's also a function of interest rates dropping and all that, right? Is that correct?
Yep, at least for our space.
Got it.
I fully agree with whatever Jeff just said, right? Because I just came off a long, I was in 2 weeks, I was talking to bankers and stuff and whatnot for our own, preparations for whatever. And anyway, as I was speaking with the bankers, it was very, very apparent that growth is coming back, right? And during the meeting, they were asking me, why are you doing, my plan this year, by the way, is to grow my EBITDA double, right? Double my EBITDA in that sense, from like 40 something to 80 something this year. And as they were looking into the numbers, they were saying, hey, you don't have to grow your EBITDA so much. You just have to grow your revenues. I was like, this is interesting. Anyways, I think what was also very interesting was the number that Jeff just said. In my past life as an investor, I've always realized that the markets, especially if you're going public, right? If you're pre-IPO, if you're a seed, Series A, getting growth at all costs, I think growth is the only measure that matters. But if you're like us, we're late stage now, I think actually a measured growth of quite circa 25-30%, if you can do more than 30% is good, but a circa 20-25%, 25 to 30% growth year-on-year kind of stuff is actually good enough for most of the public market investors.
So can I clarify, is this an American-centric narrative? Like, is this driven by American-based bankers or a NASDAQ listing kind of outcome?
I was
or
in
is
Hong
this
Kong.
an Asian narrative as well?
I was in Hong Kong, right? So I was in Hong Kong. So imagine
This is from Hong Kong banker told me this.
This is what the Hong Kong banker says. But I was in Hong Kong. To be fair, I spoke with maybe half American-based ones, like Templeton comes to mind, right? And then half whatever, right? Local ones.
Actually, that's quite heartening to see, right? Because then you would typically think that it's the West that typically always favors growth-centric tech companies. But if Asian, Asian bankers and the Asian markets are also favoring that, then I think it's a good outcome for startups in general. Can I push one level further now? Now that you all understand this, right? Then what would the changes, or what kind of changes would happen in the organization, and what kind of trade-offs would you do, right? Do you now go back to spending more money in marketing? Do you start hiring a bit more actively?
So I just literally did this 2 days ago, but as soon as I came back from Hong Kong, I did an internal round table with my management team. And one of the many things I told them, guys, we need to push for revenues. Then, of course, they will come back to me and say, oh, you changed your mind again. Yes. I did not change my mind. Just to be clear, the market changed their mind. But for us, to be honest, we're going to push for a little bit more growth than we would have otherwise planned to do. Right? It's just for myself. And then EBITDA side of stuff, I do still plan on achieving at least 80% of that, if not 100% of the target that we had. But at least that's for myself. And I don't know, what's your plan?
Yeah, I think 2021, post-2021 to us, PestNet is really getting to the very disciplined mode to start making profit. Because before 2021, I would call the wow East time, champagne time, just spend, never thought much about bottom line. And it really took us painful 2-3 years to finally get the whole organization to adapt to, you need to grow more, but no new resource. You go figure out. In the past, it's grow more resource. It's easy. Yeah. Do more with less. And now, the last 1-2 years, the message to the organization is, got AI now. So now it's do more with less. That is, next year, we are just doing our internal budget. Next year, I expect them to just use 70% of the resource to do whatever they are doing now. 1/3 of it should use for some other thing. That is the expectation from especially now with AI improving the productivity.
Rob, anything to add?
Not a whole lot new, other than I will just pick up where it is that Jeff left off. I think that there is a big expectation of adopting and investing into AI, and that is not free. And you don't get the result of that ahead of the investment. You need to make investment in order to make that happen. And so I think that it is one of those trade-offs that we generally are willing to make. If I'm going to spend more on something, I'm probably going to spend it in that space, which is a space where the market will reward it. I'll warn, which is probably a preemptive comment to what your logical follow-up question might be, but I'll just warn everyone that when you think about AI, my best advice is understand the problem that you're trying to solve first, because if you jump to finding AI solutions to solve problems that you don't even understand or that you haven't even figured out what the problem is yet, you'll fall in love with an answer and not fall in love with the problem. So my advice to all of you, fall in love with the problem. Understand your issue, and you'll find an AI solution to cure your issue. But if you fall in love with an AI solution, you're going to go the wrong way. It's a bad practice.
Yeah, you perfectly were 3 steps ahead for me, right? Because I was going to jump into the AI segue. So now that you mentioned that, right, it's a very good point, right? Where don't blindly build AI solutions if you don't have a clear problem. So for Bolttech at least, right, what is the role that AI is playing in your organization? If you could go into a bit of depth and talk about it from a different environment, right? Whether is it driving revenue, is it saving costs, or doing things, helping you do things better? How is Bolttech investing in AI?
I'll say 3 quick things. First of all, for any of you who will be at the Singapore FinTech Festival, we will be on display sharing some of the great innovations that we have with respect to our learnings in AI. We would welcome you to that, and we would hope to give you a chance to see. The second thing I'll say is that with respect to revenues, what Bolttech does around the world is that we help make access to insurance more tailored, affordable, and accessible. We, in the course of the last 12 months, have given over $70 billion of insurance premium quotes. So we're quoting insurance for human beings who are looking for Give me a quote for my auto insurance. Give me a quote for my homeowner's insurance. Give me a quote for something. We can use AI to do that better, faster, smarter than ever before. I was on stage in Las Vegas 10 days ago, and we unveiled a new AI agent that we're using in America that helps us to give many, many, many more quotes, even when the insurance carrier that we're giving the quote from does not have AI, does not have API connections. So that's a really big revenue driving, business driving example. But we're also using AI to address servicing. So in our call centers, in many countries, including, for example, Korea, we have introduced AI as the first point of contact when it comes to reaching a customer service representative. And we can handle 24-hour a day, 7-day a week service, which is better for the customer, better for our partner, and it is a better answer for Boltec as a business.
Jeff, I would assume AI is a big part of your workflow and also your organization. Could you zoom into certain areas that you're using AI?
I would say actually nowadays it's quite similar on the customer service front. Those definitely already AI. In our own coding development, all our developer use cloud code, all this to improve their code generation. Yeah, it's the same. It's just but internally, I think it's still taking time for everyone to change their mindset and then actually seeing the result. I think one good example, last month, I was talking to Lei Jun, Xiaomi founder, and he made a point that I'm doing in my organization as well. They expect 1/3 of productivity improve, but the message is not to cut 1/3 of the people. But how he is going to do it to Xiaomi is they will move 1/3 of the resource out, then the remaining 2/3 of the resource, 200%, then he confirmed they really have improved 1/3. Because everyone present to him, see how I generate 1,000 and 1,000 line of course is more effective, but those are not true productivity. The real one is if I remove 1/3 of the resource, do some other project, the remaining 2/3 can finish the business as usual activity or not. I think it's how we are doing it internally.
Okay, let me flip the question because clearly everybody is using AI for everything. Okay, where have you all started using AI that you realize hasn't really panned out, hasn't been effective, or hasn't caused any productivity cost improvement or whatsoever? Where has it not worked out or not been effective?
For us, for the bulk of it, like we use it a lot in tech, right? Our engineers, definitely the numbers have decreased, so that have helped. We definitely use it a lot for customer service, right? 85% of our total conversations are now entirely AI driven. And a lot of other places, even like finance, FinOps and stuff like that, it actually honestly pretty much helped for every single segment. But one thing I would say that has not really helped to the way I wanted to was to help us sell more cars, right? And I say this more towards edge AI, physical AI kind of stuff really. So this is more like in retail settings like this, right? How do we have computer vision acting in tandem with whatever that's coming out of the customers or our customer service representatives itself, and making sense of all these things and allowing the AI to fuse information like this that is physical in nature, all right, and then coming up with recommendations or helping to close a sale, right? So I think basically edge AI I think still has a lot of room to grow, and that's for us a lot of the time and efforts that we're going to spend moving forward for Karo is to actually think about how do we make it better, easier, faster, simpler, whatever, for customers to get their hands on a vehicle physically in person.
So at the
right?
tail end of closing the deal,
Correct, yeah,
that's
at the
where I
edge.
think AI hasn't
Correct.
really made an impact.
Right. At least for AI hasn't really helped us that much. Yeah.
Similar for the two of you? Are there any cases where AI really hasn't been effective or
The
given good outcomes?
main observation I made earlier, which is falling in love with the problem and not the solution, is the primary point that I would make. Because there have been times, you know how this is, you come to an event like this, everyone hits you up and says, hey, I've got a great AI solution, make time on your calendar for me, I'm a new AI company. The challenge with that, again, is I've got a new solution, a new idea, but I'm not still focused on, is it the problem? And so I think we've spent a lot of time trying to listen to solutions. I'd rather have people really come and say, can I understand your problem? I would say almost every AI initiative that starts with the solution has been, I don't want to call it wasted time, but inefficient time.
Gee, I really like that, right? Like AI really hasn't been able to fully understand the problem that exists in a business, and I guess it's because it's still very inference based, right? It's not fully agentic or fully being able to completely understand the business as well as a human does at this stage. Jeff, before we wrap up, I think I want to move on to the next part, right? Since we only have about 9 minutes left, can we talk about a trend that you're observing now? Something that you're excited about, could be within the realm that you work with or something outside. What is it that kind of gets you really excited from a trend standpoint that you're going to be monitoring and looking out for the next few years?
I think our business is developing and leveraging the latest AI, developing agents and sell to customer. I think one trend we see as we go deeper into this space is AI for science. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. It's very interesting problem to solve. Like recently, we are working with a startup from Oxford that they draw blood from cancer survivor patient and then run the machine, the characterization of the blood sample data, and then use those data to feed the LLM, and supposedly that LLM then can predict better antibody antigen type. To me, very interesting because we work with data, patents data, journal paper, but I think the next frontier is really find all the unique ways to go to real world. I think the edge AI is kind of it. For us is we need to get more like real world wet lab experiment data so that our model can got unique data and can be better. Like AI for science, I think that is a very interesting space.
AI for science, interesting. So for Rob and Aaron, I'll pose the question to you too as well. But it doesn't always need to be a good thing, right? It could be something scary that could even potentially cause harm to your businesses or maybe a slew of businesses out there, right? So what is one trend that excites you, might also scare you, that you're looking at now?
One of the things that excites me is the idea of ecosystems and collaboration. So we're trying to solve a big global problem. We will never do it by ourselves. We're a baby. We're a Singapore headquartered baby, and as big as we are, there's no way that we're the problem solver. Jeff and I went to the same university, not at the same time. In the United States, we went to the Wharton School of Business. And when I went there, we used to have a phrase that says, you have to cooperate to graduate. Everything you do there is in a group setting. And so if you don't work together, you will not be able to get through this by yourself. And I love that as a mental model. It excites me when I see companies starting to agree to work together to solve problems together, because when we do it alone, it's just not as powerful.
So I guess that act of collaboration and the fact that, if you also look at the world today, it kind of does feel like it's less collaborative, more inward. So that trend could be both a positive and a negative, depends on how you look at it. Aaron?
No, I mean, coming from depending on the hats I wear, right? So if I look at the investor hat, I think that one of the biggest trend I feel, and one of the best thing to do if you are interested in starting a company, is that it's the rise of single man entrepreneurs in that sense, or single man companies, right? If there is even such a phrase. I've seen many companies by now. In the past, you have to actually invest a lot into. You have to have maybe a co-founder, a CTO, blah blah blah, and stuff like that. These days, honestly, if you're a business school grad, you can write into the prompt, the LLM, so you can generate anything. So I think if I'm an investor, I think there's a rise of these things. I thought that was quite interesting. From my company standpoint, we are going full on into actually investing lesser and lesser into how do we make the company more efficient. I think that's given, right, in that sense. But more like how do we stay ahead of business models? How do we think about improving conversion rates? So basically moving from lesser cost to more revenue enhancements, right? So I think that's one part. If there's anything that I'm scared of as an educator, I feel that the long and short of this is deepfakes, right? Deepfakes itself, I think if you have saw Sora coming out from OpenAI many weeks ago, actually the following day I had an invite, right? So I actually showed it off to some of the folks in government, and I said that, look, this is what that could be done with no more than 5 sentences and stuff like that. And they was like, I won't say they were scared, they were shocked. right? And this was done to a certain degree that you cannot even tell the difference if you put two videos side by side. And if you ask, did so and so politician did this or not, right? Because it was on video. Truth is, you can't really tell, right? So I think if there's anything I'm worried about, I think it's deepfakes. But it's more, again, from the educator standpoint, how do you discern what exactly is a deepfake, right? Coming nowadays, we need to train everybody in Singapore to be more discerning of videos in that sense.
Critical thinking has become all the more important, right? Like I do catch myself sometimes getting a message from a friend, and then I'm like, is this real or is this AI? And it's becoming more and more
What's still if
difficult.
your friend asks you, Mohan, can you borrow me, lend me some money?
Yeah. Luckily, no one has done that yet. So, on hindsight, because all of your companies have existed for many years now. On hindsight, with the knowledge that you've had, the data and you've had, right, and the wisdom and the experience and the battle scars, if you could give advice to the audience starting out from the context of your own companies, right? What advice would you give? Like, what would you have done differently? What were some glaring maybe misunderstandings or mistakes that you did at the start, or how would you approach building today for the next decade or two?
Okay. One thing I'll say for sure is set a North Star and follow the North Star, and don't forget what the North Star is. There are many different twists and turns you'll need to take on the road, no problem. But don't forget what you're trying to do in the first place. Many companies lose their way. They just get caught somewhere in the winding road and forget what they set out to do. We are here to help to close a multi-trillion-dollar global protection gap. It's global, it's big, and I don't need to fight everyone else to help to close it. I can do this if we are really ingenious in solving for the problem at hand. But for me, it is never lose track of that North Star. You'll have all kinds of distractions. A pandemic, hard to raise capital, interest rate environment, geopolitics, all of that stuff, that's going to happen. Don't forget where you're going.
So laser focus on the North Star and the mission. Okay, great. Jeff?
I think when I look back my own journey, I would say maybe have more conviction, more confidence in myself as well. Because this is actually our 18 years. I think I'm the longest among the few of us here. Sometimes when I tell people 18 years, they're like, 18 years? I don't know, is it a good thing or bad thing? But definitely it showed that we have that grit or determination. But if I were to go back, I think I realized just do what you believe in. Sometimes a lot of people around you say many different feedback, but to be frank, when I look back all these years, a lot of people don't know what they are talking about anyway. So just believe in yourself and go do it.
I have a short story about Jeff. Back when we were in garage together in 2009, okay? So this was a really long time ago. Whenever I used to ask Jeff, hey, what's the plan for PetSnap? He would straight look at me in the eye and say, the NASDAQ IPO, right? That's the exit strategy. So it's interesting for you to say conviction when you were the guy I know, right, historically to have had the best conviction, right from the start when you were literally 3 people in that office. So, I mean, it's an amazing 18-year journey, and kudos to you for that. Aaron?
No, I mean, for me, it has to be... okay, I'll tell you a story, right, just before the 50 seconds left, but Minister Josephine Teo was in my office last month, right? And then during the presentation, it was an AI presentation, basically showcasing our AI capabilities to the minister. And during the presentation, I didn't know who was presenting because I was just there, just being around. But more importantly, the product AI manager, who's a product manager for AI, ourselves internally, and when the minister asked him, "What do you do before you join Caro?" Make a guess. What did he say?
Intern or your F&B business or
No.
something like that?
This guy, so you would imagine that an AI product manager would have been at least technically trained, or some product manager trained, or work in some tech companies. No, the guy used to be a chiropractor. A chiropractor. So today, all I'm going to say is that if my chiropractor can do it, so can you. Really, the power of LLMs and stuff like that is really super.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Caro's COO, his name is Seong, he shared it at our Flux event a few weeks back, that this guy doesn't even have a CS degree, is not technical trained. His degree was bioengineering, right? And yet he was doing all the AI projects with 2 interns as a starting point. So he was also trying to convince everybody in the room, like, you really don't need to be technically trained or have a CS degree or have deep technical knowledge to really jump on the AI bandwagon. And I think that's a good way to end the session. Thank you very much for the insights. It's always, I love doing this because I learn so much from all fellow like panelists like you guys. And then I go back and then sit down with my team and share a lot of these ideas. So please join me in thanking the 3 panelists for all of their insights today. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Rob, Jeffrey, and Aaron for the insights and sharing with us. And Mohan,